Hello and welcome to You Make the Difference. I'm Wanda Scarborough and I have as my guest today Pastor Greg Brown. Pastor Greg pastors Western Heights Church and he's also involved in many things in the community. He's a pastor to the community. And so we just welcome you today, Pastor Greg.
It's good to be here.
We're going to talk about the Windshape Camp today.
Okay, good.
Now, you want to tell me how the Windshape Camp got started?
Sure. Windshape camps began at Berry College in the 1980s when Truett Cathy decided to create a camp that was just full of fun and adventure and also connected students with a closer relationship with God. And over time, Truett Cathy and his daughter Trudy have discovered that that camp has changed lives.
Yes.
It's been a marvelous experience up there. It's an expensive camp. This top-notch as only Chick-fil-A would be. And several years ago, reviewing the successes of that camp and seeing the close relationships that have been created with God and others, he decided that he wanted to take that camp at Mount Berry College, put it on wheels, and send it to every city and village and hamlet in America that would house it.
Yes.
And he did. His daughter will look you in the eye and she'll say with a strange kind of authority, Trudy will, camp changes kids' lives. And believing this, they've taken their millions and said, we'll send this camp to reach your communities. They first decided to partner with churches to do that because churches, candidly, have the resources, ball fields for archery and softball and soccer. They have gymnasiums for basketball, which they train in, and they have rooms for art and for computer labs, which they bring. And they wanted to use those churches as a place in which to reach the community. They also dreamed of having community centers where many churches could come together. So just one church would not house this, but churches would partner with Chick-fil-A. They would also partner with the local operators. Josh and Rob, our local operators here in town, and have partnered with our LaGrange camp. And what happened over the years is as they partnered with churches, sometimes churches have difficulty reaching their communities. Maybe they don't know the folks in the community, and it can become very quickly a church camp. So this was never intended to be a church camp.
Yes.
This was a community camp. And last year, they came to us and asked us if, in the LaGrange camp, if we would sponsor a community camp that really pushed the leverage here, not just to reach church kids, but to reach the community and perhaps even identify some barriers we might have. And the LaGrange camp with Josh Sales and Rob Nash and 4 other churches got together. And we began to push that edge. Sherry Brown was the camp director.
Yes.
And we negotiated ways and pathways to work with local agencies, and we began to reach the community. So it's a long answer to your short question. How did it get started? It got started in the heart of Truett Cathy to reach communities for closer relationships with God and to reach the unreached, essentially. And his decision to take his money and to put that camp on wheels.
Yes, and I see that it's been transferred to the heart of Greg Brown and to other pastors in the area. Let's say, what are the 4 churches that have come together to do this in the community?
Well, our sign shows us Western Heights, First Baptist Church,
Baptist Tabernacle
and New Community have joined us, and we're asking every church that will to be a part with us. To be a partnering church, you just choose to pray into yourself a heart for it and the commitment of volunteers from your organization, and to perhaps even help us sponsor financially some students who couldn't afford to come.
Yes. So right now in this season, you're looking for students that want to come.
Yes.
And what grades are you covering in this camp?
It's for having completed grades 1 through 6.
Yes.
That's the demographic. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that children in our community who don't get to have a camp experience can come. One of our models has been the Luke 14 banquet,
Yes.
when Jesus said, when you give a banquet, don't just invite your rich friends and your neighbors or your relatives, because they can pay you back. But when you give a banquet, go find the poor, the crippled, the blind, the lame. Bring them to that banquet, and they can't pay you back, but you'll be rewarded in the resurrection of the just. We are the resourceful. First Baptist, Western Heights, New Community, Tabernacle. We, the resourceful,
Yes.
had placed in our laps this opportunity to put on a banquet. Chick-fil-A is bringing it. They're bringing games, archery, drama, painting, computer science. Kids have so much fun and adventure. And we want to bring the children of this community to that fun experience, which is top notch.
Oh, yes.
And we want then also, we the resourceful, have as a goal that at least half of those who attend our camp will have some form of scholarship to remove any barriers that might keep them from coming and reach the whole community.
Yes. And how many children will be at this camp? What's your goal?
Our goal this year is the top, 500. That's what they can do. And last year we had 300 at a facility that was smaller. This year we're bringing a goal of 500 students to Lafayette Christian School.
Yes.
And John Sepulveda is to be commended. He has partnered with us, opened up his beautiful facility, his ball fields, his parking lot, his gymnasium, his classrooms. And if you could just see it as I see it, Wanda, 25 college students who have been trained specifically, even in their own colleges, they recruit for their majors.
Yes.
So if you're a college student that's been recruited to work with this, you've been trained. But not only that, but you come from archery. Last year we had a gymnastics teacher who studies gymnastics at the University of Arkansas. And she came on that van.
Yes.
And she came here to teach kids in gymnastics. And it was a tremendous experience. Dancing, we had a young girl who played basketball in high school and college. She was the drill instructor in the basketball camp.
Yeah.
The same way with archery. So we want to reach students whose minds are alive and awake, and make sure everyone gets invited to this table.
Yes. And these counselors that are coming, they're really the best of the best, aren't they? They're trained in their skill, but they are also godly young men and women, and with a heart for these children. And it was just a pleasure to watch them operate and
Yes.
in their skills, but also relate to the children. And
Yes.
Lives were changed last year, weren't they?
They were.
Do you have a few examples of some lives that were changed last year?
Yes, we have. When they come, they, as you say, and I'll underscore that, these students all have a supernatural love of God.
Yes.
And I don't know how Chick-fil-A recruits or what their hiring grid is, but it's marvelous.
It is.
They do somehow get the best of the best. And in that, they take a spiritual view of the children as made in the image of God.
Yes.
And see themselves as evoking that God-given image and creating a relationship with God. Last year we had a student who came and tragically 2 weeks later died in a drowning
Yes.
accident, Hakeem. But we know that he went to be with the Lord.
That's right.
And he had accepted Christ as his Savior through that camp. We had over 165 students that we were able to take to local churches a little small spiritual outline of their heart in terms of the questions they were asking about God,
Yes.
in terms of their eagerness to maybe be a part of a fellowship with a Christian base. And we were able to go out to the community churches and give them that list. Todd Pruitt, with the Fellowship of Christian
Yes.
Athletes, became an ambassador for the camp, and he went to all the churches where he could find someone who would answer the door and say, these students came with your church as their home address for faith and biblical knowledge. And we want to tell you these are some of their important questions and their desires to know God. So what they do is we have a plan to bring the same students back over 5 years. So if you begin this in the first grade, we want you to come back the second, third, fourth, and fifth grade.
Oh, wow.
So there's truly a foundational aspect
Discipling
of
of
building,
it,
and
yeah.
discipling you, yes.
That is wonderful. You know what? When is this camp?
It's June the 10th through the 14th.
Yes.
And it's a day camp. And
Yes.
You're able to bring your students. If you're a parent, you can bring them early. And then we have, if you have to pick them up at 5:30, we're able to hold the kids over for you to come and pick them up. Also on Friday, they have a thing called Family Fun Day.
Yes.
And Rob and Josh, our two operators here, they will provide Chick-fil-A meal for all the family members. And we expect, if we have 500 students, we expect almost 1,500 people to come on our Family Fun Day.
Yes.
In which the students show some of their crafts and the things they've accomplished. But also, those two operators will be feeding free all those families for Family Fun Day.
That's amazing.
It will be. That will be a task.
They are amazing people, aren't they?
They are.
They are.
You know, Josh and Rob are brothers in the Lord.
Uh-huh.
And they're unusual. They're two operators who candidly have to be competitive for market share. But they work together, and they had dreamed of putting on this camp, doing something together.
Yes.
And Rob had a dream 2 years ago, almost 3 now, of bringing this camp to LaGrange, and it's happened.
And you know, I talked to Josh a couple of months ago, and he was telling me they're top sellers in Chick-fil-A. So we do very well in LaGrange.
We do.
For Chick-fil-A. So
Yes.
that's awesome news to
It
me.
is.
And then also he was telling me that our community raised more money for the camp than any other community where it was first introduced.
Well, we did.
Yes.
What happened is we began to share with different donors our needs. And for example, we had, rather than raising money for the camp, essentially, which is $189, we sort of rounded it off, and we would go to people and say, you know, we have students over at Hollis Hand, for example, in special education class.
Yes.
We have 10 students there. And in rounded figures, it would take $2,000 to see that those special education kids have a camp. And we told that story, and we had donors step forward, and Lichty over at Kia said, let me do that, let me sponsor them.
Yeah.
George Childers has stepped forward and said, I want to sponsor 10 students.
Yes.
Last year, Toyota sponsored students. Charter Bank, thanks be to God, has been our lead donor for the camp, and they've given $10,000.
Wow.
To help us get a start on these scholarships. Lee
I
Walsham
love our community.
and Phyllis Boyette and Joe Ragland
Yes.
have really stepped out as a lead donor, and it's a tremendous gift that they've given us.
It really is. And you know, I love our community because if you present a need, our community they'll rise up and they will meet that need, won't
Yes.
they? And before we go a little further, I want to say that we need volunteers for this camp too.
We do.
And how can they register to volunteer? How can they register to go to camp? There's a website, right?
Yes, windshapecamps.org. And it's intuitive, and you follow it, and you just go to the Camps for Communities, and then from there you just click through to either registering or volunteering. And you sign up to volunteer, and it's there. And then let me, to go back to your previous question, the needs we have.
Okay.
Troop, for example, the Girls and Boys Club has a tremendous new start here in town, and $4,000 would sponsor 20 students over there. And we need those funds to make sure the kids from the Boys and Girls Club can come. Equally for Harmony House, we've identified students, for Emmaus House. And perhaps there's someone who would say, I want to make sure that all the kids at Harmony House. A special group that I like is a group we call Grandparents Raising Children.
Yes.
In this town, there are grandparents who are raising their children. I candidly am one of those. My grandparents raised me
Oh, yeah.
and would not have had the resources to send me to camp. And so $2,000 would be a gift to those grandparents to say, thank you for being a social net, for being a spiritual nest in which you're raising your grandchildren. Let us help you and see that your kids get to go to this Cadillac of a camp.
Yes.
That would just really be an important gift if someone could make it. As you know, Circles of Troop is busy at work
Yes.
and giving people resources and relationships and reasons to come out of poverty. And through them, we've identified 5 children who could benefit from this camp did they have the financial resources.
I want you to talk a little bit about the Circles of Troop County. I know that you've been very involved. Sherry is the person that guides this camp through.
Yes.
And she also is the person who guides Circles of
Yes.
Troop County through. And y'all are an awesome team together because you both do these things together. And you've attended the Circles of Troop County meetings and made relationships with the people who are going through. I'd just like for you to share some about your experience in Circles.
Well, Circles of Troop is a 30-year-old long organizationally tied to MoveTheMountain.org.
Yes.
That is a nationwide program that's 30 years old and which has a tremendous track record of giving folks in poverty reasons, relationships, and resources by which to move out of government housing, off of welfare, out of subsidized and food stamps and things of that sort, in order to live flourishing lives.
Yes.
And praise be to the community leaders of our town, who are too numerous to mention, but our leaders in our town decided we need to do this. Seeing the problem of poverty in LaGrange, how can we move our folks out of poverty? We have a lot of Band-Aid ministry, and we have a lot of things that my church has done and many others. We've done food kitchens, we've done food closets, we've done food drives.
Yes.
But there's this larger systemic issue that needs to be addressed in poverty. And so Circles is attempting to address larger issues as well as identify through interviews people who say, I want to come out of poverty. And they're giving them reasons, relationships, and resources. They meet every Thursday night.
Yes.
The community is asked to be a part of that as allies. And the individuals in poverty who want to come out become circle leaders. And so Circles of Troop, while in its infancy here, joins a larger 30-year program that's been wildly successful in actually bringing people out of government assistance into self-sustaining, nurturing lifestyles.
It's very, and it's a big hurdle to come out of that too, because you have to go from making a small amount of income to a fairly good income to come out of poverty.
You do.
And so somebody in poverty would need a good support system. And I want you to, Greg, to talk about the friendships that you've made in Circles of Troop County, how you've seen the ladies that are, because they're all ladies.
Yes.
And just tell me some stories about your experience in that.
Well, my experience has been, I went to help and to aid and to do, and also to come alongside my wife Sherry,
Yes.
who's doing this. And actually, I've learned so much.
You got hooked.
To be confessional, perhaps my simple definition of poverty was poverty goes to bad behaviors and bad habits, and perhaps a lot of immorality mixed in creates poverty. What I've discovered is there's a complex matrix
Yes.
that defines poverty, and while bad habits and the characteristics of individual habits do contribute, there's a much larger issue.
Yeah.
There's a systemic issue. There are barriers to getting out of poverty. There are problems of job creation. There are communities that don't foster or nurture growth. There's such a thing as a mindset of poverty. And Sherry's fond of saying that poor people are not just middle-class people without money.
Right.
But often poverty has its own mindset. And she spends a lot of time in her training distinguishing between middle-class mindsets and the mindsets of poverty. So there's I've learned that there's really an attempt here to change the mindset of poverty and the spiritual heart set. And that's what I've learned. And I've met folks who are working hard. I met a young lady, and I won't mention her name, but she said, you know, we interviewed her as to the program, and she said, I'll work 5 jobs. I'll do anything to get my kids out of the housing they're in, into a safe neighborhood.
Yes.
And she does. Her problem is that she's only has only low-wage opportunities, and doesn't have the social capital and the network by which to really get a better job. Or maybe doesn't understand the application process for training at West Georgia, or for the opportunities to help her provide. In the middle class, you and I, typically, we get jobs through the social capital, through the networks. We know people.
Yes.
We talk to people. We have friends.
They can help us.
They help us.
Yes.
And so Circles of Troop is creating some allies that become those friends and those relationships that literally are bridges to resources. Interestingly, they give no money. There is no carrot on the stick at the end.
Right.
They give the resources, the relationships, and supply support for the regions to come out of poverty.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm working with Circles in Troup County too, and we've really made some relationships that we will have for the rest of our life, don't you think?
I think so too.
Yeah.
I've met beautiful people who I've fallen in love with, and I've been hooked. I want to see them succeed.
Yes.
You know, Jesus said, who are my mother, my father, my sisters, my brothers? These. And indeed, some of these have become like family members to me, heart-to-heart relationships. And Sherry's trained over 55, I think now, allies.
Yes.
Folks from our community with deep resources coming, not to give money, but to give of themselves and their heart and their spirit to Circles of Troop.
Yes.
It's happening as we watch. We know nationwide that a community our size, if we can get 1,500 people out of poverty, and that's the tipping point for the social revolution that needs to happen in terms of moving a community from an impoverished state to a more flourishing state. So we've made that beginning.
Right.
We've made that beginning.
Yes. And our first class has graduated.
It has.
And it's the season for putting the allies with the circle leaders.
Yes.
And beginning that 18-month relationship.
Yes.
And it's also the season of starting a new group.
Yes.
Of people that will be circle leaders, those that are wanting to come out of poverty. So this is a continuing thing that we will do in our community to eventually reach that 1,500.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting, isn't it?
It is. And you reach that 1,500 in an amazing way. For example, while we have 6 graduates, we have around 15 children.
Yes.
And then in the next iteration of this, maybe we'll have 12 or 15 graduates. And how many children will that be? Will it be 30? Because once you bring a family system out of poverty, you bring their children out.
That's right.
And then you get to a larger demographic that then begins to, through the energy they have and the synergy and the cross-fertilization of their communities, begins to exert an upward lift on the entire community. This is not just theory. This is practice. This is what's happening in communities who are doing circles. And once again, I want to thank the leaders and the fathers of this and mothers of this community who have really funded and believed in this program and have taken a serious look at poverty in LaGrange and have committed themselves to being proactive and offering a way out.
Yes. And then I just want to mention that I have observed that your church is a church that really reaches out in the community. Y'all don't stay in the four walls. And so you may have your hands in Windshake Camp, or you may have your hands in circles, or you may have your hands in Unity School, missions, those different kinds of things. And I also just want to mention, because I think this is very important, that part of that came from Chief Dekmar, right? Chief Dekmar, tell me that story.
Lou Dekmar?
Yes.
Years ago when I first came to Western Heights, but let me just say this is not really about Western Heights.
Yeah, oh yes.
And even as we've reached out beyond the walls to our community, every time from our church space we go out, we discover there are other churches
That's
out
right, there are.
doing so much. And could the story be told and conflated and put together? It's tremendous what all the churches are doing here. But in my own particular instance, I met Lou, I think 15 years ago when I came. And he shared, he's like a philosopher and a sociologist. He's a great leader that we have. And Lou shared his joy that churches, he noticed when he came to LaGrange, went around the world in missions. But he dreamed what might happen if every church here just had a mission to LaGrange. What would happen if we just all went here and worked locally? I shook his hand afterwards and I said, Lou, I'm on you. Lou, from now on, as I can lead it, our church, if I have any influence, we'll have a mission in LaGrange. We will serve our community, and we'll come to you, we'll come to the city council, we'll come to the mayor, we'll come to the city itself, all the local great charities we have.
Yes.
And we'll say, how can we help you? What do you need? And so we have. We've had a mission LaGrange every year.
Yes, that is awesome, and I love it. And I love what the other churches do too. And I think that is what makes our community a wonderful community. So before we leave, we just want to remind you that Windshake Camp is coming to our community. It is a wonderful camp. It is so fun. I was there last year and I enjoyed it as an adult. So if your children are eligible for this camp, sign them up. And if you want to volunteer, go on the website and we'll see you at the camp. Thank you for watching.
Got a promise from heaven. It's a year of replevin. Got a promise from heaven.